Hello, Lucía. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Just fine. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Have you received
I received
my feedback?
Well, did you send like with comments?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Well, I was like, lost, but I
Okay.
saw the rubric.
Okay.
And
If
the
you
way it was
if you
written.
go to check your feedback, it's going to be a little bit different. Let me see if I can show a different view here. What I see is a little bit different than what you see, but let me check here.
You've been pretty busy with.
Been kind of busy this week, but I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished. So, okay. So if you go to, let's see, grades, and if you go to literature review, on the right-hand side, you should receive some comments, the rubric, and also a document as an attachment, a Word document, where you should then be able to download that document onto your computer and open it up. But it'll be on the right-hand side over here. So check that today, please. If you don't receive it, send me an email. But you have to go into from the homepage grades. Yeah, literature review, and then the right-hand side. Are you connected right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
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 So the way that I'm.
Show. Yeah, the document. Yeah.
Okay. So the grade that I am giving for each individual product. I'm going to be giving feedback for each product with the idea that we still have time to make those changes for the 23rd of May. So the idea is that you make those changes, and then on the 23rd of May, when I look at the first draft, which is really my final draft as far as we're concerned, I'll be looking for those changes, and I'll be looking for a better version in the first draft than what you did before. So I'll make changes based on the changes that you make, and go back and modify each individual grade accordingly. So make sure you take a look at my feedback. Make sure that you understand the feedback. If you don't, obviously, let me know. But we still have until the May 23rd to finish making all the last-minute changes to the document. But I wouldn't wait until the last minute to make those changes. I would go ahead and try to make those as soon as possible while it's still fresh in your mind. Then you can focus your efforts more on the rest of the process for a thesis. So that's how I'll be evaluating each of the individual products for Thesis Seminar.
Okay.
¿Sí puedes abrirlo?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm saying like just, for example, the citations, I was sure that I added this guy and it was like...
Okay. Well, check. I mean, if I miss
Yeah.
something, let me know too. I mean, but,
yeah, if not, then I have to recheck like the source and I check why didn't I didn't, and why if I did.
Okay. Yeah, just check it. Yeah, and if you have, we can talk about it in our tutoring sessions, or you can send me an email if you, if you want clarification or if you need clarification.
Okay.
So, do you have any specific questions regarding
About the
literature?
review, well, I'm going to check it. And,
Okay. You can let me know. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to let you know.
Okay, so let's now take a look at your research questions, because we need to start thinking about our instrument designs. Now we have 4 weeks. Well, we just finished 1 week, so we have 3 more weeks to design our instruments. But we need to look very closely now at our research questions. So let me pull those up here. So
too many things to do.
Yeah. But you're coming along here, so
yeah, but
fine.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm head of the group, and it's like lo de titulación is like I'm in charge of everything, and like
Hang in there, because after this semester,
Yeah.
you'll be able to relax a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking here at your research questions.
Yeah.
So let's take a look here. Essentially, how do teachers make use of different forms of verbal communication? And how often do teachers make use of nonverbal? Okay, and how do verbal and nonverbal communication relate to each other? All right, just double check here with the punctuation. You don't need the commas. I would just list them out as you have them.
Without the commas?
Or maybe a semicolon, perhaps. You could do it that way, semicolon. Okay, so the research designs, what type of instruments are you thinking about including?
Yeah, I was thinking, the observation, an interview.
Okay.
And also I was thinking conversations, like after the class, like discuss a little bit with the teacher about the instructions and the aspects.
Okay, so the observation sheet. Now, okay, what kind of observation sheet?
Observation.
Now you're probably going to need to record
Uh-huh.
and a video recording of your classes. So you'll have to be thinking about where you're going to be observing. Do you have any ideas about which schools or teachers?
Well, I asked here a teacher from when Gerardo, and I asked, I don't know if it's okay, I asked some of my classmates that give me SP courses.
Okay. So we need to think about how many teachers.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking 2.
Okay. And so how many observations?
And I was thinking like maybe 3 observations per teacher.
Okay. So let's plan on tentatively 2 teachers with 3 observations each. And for the observation sheet, do you have an idea, something in mind for your observation sheet, or?
For my observation sheet, well, I have to design it. Like, I've been looking for like examples so I can build it up.
Well, one thing that I was thinking about for an observation sheet, and this is very basic, but you're going to have a header at the top, so you'll have your basic information about the teacher, the time, the type of class, that type of thing. Below it, something very simple. One way to do this would be to divide it up into, let's see, time and basically description. Now, you're going to be observing only those times where the teacher's giving instructions, right? Because that is the focus. So what you're going to be doing here is just listening, and at the moment that the teacher begins giving instructions, what I would do with your watch, make sure you have a watch with you, and write down the starting time. So the moment that the teacher begins giving instructions, you might say, okay, 8:10, for example. And then under the description, then you just start writing as much as you observe. So the teacher says this, the students are responding. You're basically just writing, taking notes about everything that is observable. That is, what is the teacher doing? What is the teacher saying? What are the students doing, and what are they saying? How are they replying? Are they maintaining eye contact? Because part of what you're doing here also is looking at eye contact. So both from the teacher to the student, also from the students to the teacher. So are some of the students looking out the window, or some of them sleeping, or some of them wide looking? You don't know if they're paying attention, but you can observe if they're maintaining eye contact or if they're, turning around. So you're basically writing as much as possible. The idea here is that you describe as much as you can without analyzing. So you're not analyzing. At this point, you just want to capture as much information as possible, just whatever you notice. Obviously, you're going to complement your notes, your field notes, with the video.
Yes.
And so the idea is, with the video and your own notes, you can better recall later. This is the point of here, is just so that you can recall later and then analyze later what you saw. or what you observe. So
Like
the
compare.
idea, so let's say that the teacher gives instructions for 15 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, whatever. Then, and they stop, and then they start doing an activity. You write the ending time,
Mm-hmm.
and then you wait.
Okay.
Now, at this point, you may observe it. You might want to just continue doing this, even though you're only focusing on instructions. You don't know when students are going to come up with a question, or they don't understand. They reveal that they didn't understand the question. So I would try to recall as much as possible and break down the classes into chunks and just repeat this. So time and description.
Yeah, repeat that.
And then, okay, 8:20 to 8 whatever. And then in the description, depends. You might have a lot to write, maybe you don't have much to write. It just depends on you observing, and as you get into it, you'll start to recognize what you need to write down or not. But it's better to have too much information than not enough on the notes. So this is kind of a simple way that you can observe. And the only thing that this doesn't do is indicate where the teacher is. So if you think that, which I think probably would also be part of your analysis, like the position of the teacher.
The position of the teacher.
So there's like a notation, there's a way of doing that where you can you put like one and then draw an arrow, and then and then indicate kind of indicate how the teacher moves throughout the class, because that could also be part of your the nonverbal, right? How the proximity, how close is the teacher or distant, or that type of thing.
Yes.
So try to find a way.
So
maybe
if there is, for example, information about proximity, because I found something but I didn't add it. I added to the literature.
Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. If you
Okay.
think that there's plenty of time still to add something, but if proximity is not in your literature review and you feel that you're content with what you have, then you don't have to include that. So it's up to you. But I was just mentioning this maybe if that's part of, because maybe the eye contact, maybe you don't talk so much about proximity, but let's say that the teacher maintains more eye contact when they're farther away, or more, or maybe when they're closer they maintain more eye contact. I don't know. Or maybe when they're closer they use more gestures than when they're far away. I don't know.
Okay. Yes.
It's this is kind of an exploratory research. So keep your mind open to anything like this that that is, because you're basically looking for patterns. You're looking for things that the teacher tends to do. So I think 2 teachers is plenty, and I think 3 observations should be enough.
Yeah.
Okay, but we'll be talking about it, and after maybe 1 or 2 classes, reflect and think, okay, am I getting enough information, or will I need to have maybe 1 more class? But you're going to know after 1 or 2 classes kind of how the information. But I think, if the teacher is giving instructions, now if I wouldn't choose classes where I would choose a quote unquote typical class, like if you know that the teacher is going to review an exam or apply an exam, well, probably those 2 days wouldn't be the best day. In fact, you might even limit, well, depends. I was thinking maybe you limit the classes to where they're going to introduce something new, or even just maybe an activity as kind of a review. I don't know, but I think for sure I think you should avoid like classes where they are applying an exam.
Yes.
Because that would be, and even though they're giving instructions, I don't know. I would choose just a regular class.
Yeah.
So that would be the observation sheet. So we have our observation sheet.
An interview.
We're going to have recordings, so that'll be 2 different data sources. Okay, so we'll have your field notes.
Yeah.
Field notes.
Video.
And you'll have the video. Now the interview. Okay, so the interview. When are you thinking about applying the interview?
Yeah, well, in the interview, well, I was thinking, for example, I have the option of the interview and, for example, the conversation. Yeah, and then I have in the interview, I have to interview the same teacher, right? Do you think?
Yeah, I'm sorry, when you say conversation, are you referring
Okay,
to?
yeah, the conversation, I was thinking like after the class, like have like 5 minute conversation with the teacher about how, I mean, how did you notice that you used, for example, nonverbal communication, or how do you think about using verbal communication
Okay,
during the class?
let's call that also an interview.
Yeah, an interview.
Yeah, even though it should be conversational.
Uh-huh.
And what you're basically going to be doing is a semi-structured interview. So you do want to keep it as conversational as possible, as informal as possible, where the teacher doesn't feel like it's an interrogation where you're drilling question, question, question. But you are going to be asking certain questions based on what you observed. So the question I have is, do you need to apply an interview before the class?
Maybe before.
And what would be the purpose of applying
the interview? Well, I
or
was
what would you be asking?
Like, how do you usually use? I mean, do you notice that you use verbal communication? What type of verbal communication do you use when giving instructions?
Have you chosen the teachers? I'm sorry, you said you had a couple of teachers in mind, but have you talked to those teachers to say, hey,
no, I haven't talked to them, but I'm going to.
Okay. All right, so one thing to think about is not mentioning at the beginning what the focus is of your research is.
Okay.
So that they don't know what you're going to be observing. They know you're going to be there observing, but they're not going to know what you're observing. Since you are looking at, in this case, instructions and verbal communication, nonverbal communication, because if you haven't interviewed before, then they may be conscious that they may do something that they typically don't do. So you might think about not having an interview and not really informing them much at this point at the beginning, much about your research, not telling them that you're looking for those specific things, so that you just say, look, do you mind? Can I do my study, and I probably will need maybe a couple of interviews. I may need to come to 3 classes, and ask them if it's okay to do that. Can I videotape your class, for example? And if they give you the okay, then maybe then start with your research after you observe one class. Then you need to decide whether you need to have an interview right away, or that you wait until after the 2nd class, or if you wait until after the 3rd. Just depends. It depends on obviously the availability of the teacher, but also what you observe. If you see something really interesting that you think that you need to ask about, you need to decide, should you do it then or not. One of the benefits of waiting to the end is that they don't know till the very end what you were observing. So any interview that you have, they're going to know pretty much what you're looking at.
Okay.
So
maybe an interview like later after observing?
Maybe after observing.
Okay. So I can get even get questions from the observation as something related.
Right. So in your field notes each day, you're going to say, okay, I got to remember, I need to ask the teacher about this. And make a note. And do those. So then do that for each day. Then at the very end, bring in those questions and then create your guide. So even though, let me kind of go back here, even though we have 4 weeks to do our design, okay, in this particular case, and this is very common in qualitative research, sometimes when we start collecting our data, it actually informs us and helps design the other instruments that we need to complement. So in this case, is a perfect example. We're not going to really design our interview guide until you have observed a few classes. So technically, we're going to start our data collection, and we're not going to work first in the design of all your instruments and then data collection. We're going to start a few of your designs for your instruments, start the data collection process, finish up, in this case, the interview guide once you've been informed of the class and you have some good questions to do. So, yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so I think that would be, I think a good way to approach the data collection. Okay. Now, one of the questions I have, one of the questions that the examiners may have is, they may ask, why did you choose these teachers?
Yes, I was thinking that.
And so, what we can't say is, son mis cuates, or son más fácil porque es acerca.
Because they fit it to the.
Yeah, so we need to think of
what I was thinking to do was maybe observe, like, the very first observation, like, choose maybe 4 teachers, and from those 4 teachers, choose the ones that fit to the 2 ones that fit to the.
So you would observe 4 classes?
Yeah, maybe I was thinking to choose, like, observe more teachers, like 4, for example, like the first time, and from these 4 teachers, like the first observation, to see, okay, this teacher, it seems like he fits more to what I'm looking for.
Okay. And how would you choose those 4 teachers?
I don't know, maybe from the observations, that first observation I would get. So.
Yeah, but what would be the rationale for choosing those 4? Or, let's see. So you're looking at, like, extension courses? Is that kind of like adults, or like teaching kids, or do you have?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's Fomento, Fomento. And I was thinking, choosing Gerard because, I've observed his classes, like, before, and he's really, giving instructions, I've noticed that he's really good. And here's the thing. We need to choose. Okay, so you've had this teacher before, is that why you know? Yeah, and I asked him before, what levels do you have? And he told me he has level 2 and 12 or 4. Okay, and I thought level 2 students don't know, like, they may not get, like, instruction, like, at the very beginning. They may ask questions, they may.
Okay, here's what I was thinking. You tell me what you think about it. One way to do this is to apply a very, very basic questionnaire, and you apply it to several teachers, a lot of teachers. And you ask questions about very general questions about the difficulties that they have in the class, or what they think they do well, some of their strengths or their weaknesses, but not mentioning instructions. But really about, what are your 3 things that you think you do best, and 3 things that you struggle with, that you really have problems with.
Okay.
Yeah, a pretty basic questionnaire, but from there, hopefully, you can see something. Maybe they don't mention exactly giving instructions, but you'll, based on the language, you should be able to say, okay, this teacher may or may not have problems, but you have a rationale. You can say, I chose these 2 teachers because this teacher responded this way, this teacher responded this way, and maybe you choose 2 teachers, one that is like Geras, or maybe in fact Geras, but that has good, that is very good at giving instructions, and maybe you choose one that really struggles. Maybe they say, my students, they never understand when we start an activity. And maybe they don't mention instructions, but that might indicate that they're not giving instructions in a way that the students understand, right? Yeah. And so I think that might be one idea, and you apply it, to
maybe a few teachers that I can consider.
Several teachers, because you want to keep it very simple, but apply it to as many as you can, as many as that you have time to analyze. And it's a quick analysis. It's basically just looking and saying, okay, these teachers are kind of skimming through. It's not an in-depth analysis, because you're not going to use all the data for your study. It's kind of like a filter. And when you finally choose those 2 teachers, then you can use the information from those questionnaires from those 2 teachers, and the rest we'll just set aside. Okay, so we won't do an in-depth analysis on the rest of them, but it will give you a good reason, and it might create a more interesting analysis if you find preferably 2 teachers maybe that are different in some way, whether it's the level, their experience, their own skill and pedagogical skill, based, their own students. Maybe they have one teacher has students with learning disabilities, for example, and they have problems or whatever, and then you can from that point choose more systematically those 2 teachers, and then whenever you present your mock presentation, you're talking to the Seminars, you can say, I chose these 2 teachers for this reason, da 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 da, and then there won't be any question. I don't think they'll be because they could ask you, well, why? Yes. And it's a valid question. You're going to be doing a case study, and the reason to do a case study, even though there's 2 teachers, it's kind of a multiple case study, is because they are unique in some way. They're different. And the reason they're different is going to be revealed in these questionnaires. You want to say these 2 teachers are different because of this. So what do you think? Now this questionnaire can be done online, or it can be done physical. Go by and it may be a little bit time consuming at the beginning, but I think at the end you'll have 2 good teachers, hopefully, that will.
And this will be counted as like an instrument, or I have to take into account?
It'll be another form. Only those 2 instruments are only the teachers that are part of your study. Right, but yes, that'll be another data source. So you'll have your questionnaire,
and the observation.
You'll have your observation.
And the interview.
Before I forget too, in the questionnaire, also include questions like, would you be willing to participate in a research? This research might include 2 or 3 interviews, 3 record the class on the video, that way. And they indicate if they obviously
like at the very
say no.
End, maybe.
Yeah, so you also know that those teachers are willing to participate. And that'll save you some time also. So we have the questionnaires, we have the observation sheets or the field work, your notes. We'll have the interview guide, but we'll worry about that later after you start observing.
So.
And I think that's it. That should be enough. We'll have 3-4 data sources actually.
The video also counts as a data source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, like.
Right, but it'll be part of your observation. But you'll have your observations, which are 2 data sources. You'll have your interviews, and you'll have the questionnaires.
And from the video, will I have to like? To transcribe like maybe the parts in which the teacher gives instructions?
Well, you'll have to transcribe at the moment that they are giving instructions and how the students are replying. And this is where your observation along with the video need to really complement each other, because you need to be 2 things. The video needs to be positioned in a way that can be recorded as well as possible. Okay, and obviously you can see everything. That's going to be kind of hard, because sometimes you have to be able to view everything. You have to bring it back, and then
have it holding the camera or writing there.
And then the audio. In fact, ideally, you have the video, and you have a cell phone, and you record it at the same time. That's the best thing, because just in case something happens with the video, at least you have something there. So I would position the phone maybe in the front or next to the teacher, somewhere in the front, and then you have your video, and then hopefully with both audios and your notes.
Yes.
And whenever the teacher asks something, when you're doing your description, you're going to try to write as much as you can. The teacher asks, this is the question. And then the students respond this. So whatever you hear in class, you're also writing down. So even just in case if you can't make it out on the audio or the video, you have it in your notes. So hopefully between those 3, you should get all the details to do your transcription. But you only have to transcribe those exchanges where there's instructions. Right. So Now, whenever you do that, I'm thinking too later on, whenever the student maybe they didn't understand the instructions, they could ask a question which would be like another exchange, but it's linked to the other question. So that's where you're going to be kind of connecting the discourse. But you don't have to do the discourse for the entire class.
Yeah.
So, and again, the transcription will be later when you do the analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. And the interview will be like also recorded maybe?
Yes.
And then
absolutely. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, if it's not recorded, you can't use it. So basically, record it and.
But not transcribed or.
Or
maybe you're taking.
Not really.
For example, for the discussion, remember, like you told us that, for example, we have to use like the exact quotation for what the teacher said, like.
Right,
maybe.
and that you'll need to do that, but you won't have to do necessarily a transcription.
Like,
I mean, you're just gonna be listening to it and whatever they said. Right.
Oh.
Right. But you may need to do a transcription for the classroom discourse, but not so much the interview.
Okay.
Okay. And so.
So yeah.
What else? And that's something too. I'm gonna say 3 classes, but I want you to see me after each observation to let me know kind of how much data you have, because if you have like tons and tons of data, right? I want to keep it manageable. I mean, it has to be something that you can do. So if you get, for example, one case, this could happen. One class, you get tons of information. That could happen. If that happens, we might consider more than 2 teachers.
Okay.
All right. So let's just keep it right now at 2 teachers, right? Maybe 3, but it's tentative, right? So the idea is that you have.
It will be dependent on the amount of information.
Right.
Okay.
So I would like to kind of see you after each class and let me know kind of how much data you think you're getting.
Yes.
Don't have to do the whole transcription, but you should know kind of how much transcribing you'll be needing to do. And that way we keep this manageable, but also that there's enough data to do a good research.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So I think that's it. We have 4 weeks, but if you finish before, as soon as you finish with the instruments, you can begin before. You don't have to wait 4 weeks, right? So I'm telling everyone, I'm going to go at your pace, and when you have everything ready, if you want to see me even before tutoring session.
If I have, for example, the observation sheet ready, I can send it to you.
You can send it or come by. If you know that, for example, like 2 days you can meet this teacher, and our tutoring session's not until next week, we'll come by or send me something and we can look at it. If it's an instrument, probably the best thing is just to come by. And we can look at it and I can give you feedback, make comments. You can either print it out or bring it on a computer or whatever. And so that way you can try to schedule your time with other teachers. Because that's the thing, the logistics now, we're going to be looking at the actual doing of the research where you're going to be now dependent on other teachers. And so just plan your time as much as possible with the teachers. Anticipate problems as far as one day maybe they can't meet you, so that way I think too, if we can finish early with the instrument designs and give you maybe a week extra or maybe 2 weeks more on the data collection, we'll have kind of a cushion there in case something should go wrong, right? So if we need more time, so let's plan on that. And if you want to show something next week on the next tutoring session or before, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's basically the questionnaire will be the first thing we need to look at. But if you want to bring in the observation sheets, pretty much this, I think. If you think this works for you, and this is a suggestion only. If you have something else, that's fine.
The head of the top is like the name of the teacher, or?
Yeah, like the dates, the location, the teacher's name, the level, any information about the teacher if you want to include that.
For example, in
male,
case of
female, maybe. I mean, I don't know if you want to put like the gender, the age. That's up to you. But this is all. these are case studies, so you do want to have some information about each participant.
Okay.
Because you might see patterns in maybe,
Yeah.
based on age, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, so let's do that next week. Let's look at those instruments, or before if you want, and I don't think you'll need permission if you do your research here.
Sure.
If you're planning on doing it somewhere else and you think you need permission, now's the time to be getting the permission. So I'm not sure if that's in your case, but if you think you need permission, do that right now, right? Like this week or early next week, so that you have the permission well enough in advance when you begin your research. Because sometimes it requires a signature and it'll sit on somebody's desk for a few days, and so you're just waiting. So I've had students where we've been well into the data collection and they can't do anything because they don't have the permission. So now's the time if that applies to you. So. All right, and if you have any questions about your literature review, obviously let me know.
I'm going to send you that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So anything else?
Well, so far so good.
I think we've got, I think, enough time to get everything finished, and you're moving along here at a good pace here, so keep at it.
Yes.
Okay, Lucía. Well, thanks then. We'll see you. Have a good weekend, and
you too.
We'll see you next week.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye.